USCIS switches to the punishing final action dates chart. How global protests and activism are putting permanent residency at risk. Urgent travel alert. A KLM flight attendant is hospitalized as a deadly Hantavirus outbreak hits cruise ship. The great real estate dump. Why Gulf NRIs are suddenly moving 80% of their property wealth into stock market. Australia's Indian diaspora booms while Moody's declares India the most resilient economy in the world. All of that in today's episode. Welcome to Desh Videsh Desk, your home to what matters for NRIs. Don't forget to subscribe and like for all the efforts we are making so that you're always in the know on what's going on around the world that directly impacts the NRI's life. All the news will be vetted and the links will be in the description. Please make sure to read. Let's start with the most urgent news for our US based viewers. A massive tightening of immigration controls is upon us. According to reports from Baha News, US green card processing is facing sudden freezes and heightened scrutiny. But it gets worse when we look at the actual procedural data. As highlighted by Hunton, analysis of May 2026 visa bulletin, the State Department has hit the brakes, forcing USCIS to switch back to strict final action dates chart for employment-based visas. Why does this hurt so much? Earlier this year, using the dates for filing chart allowed you to submit your H1 status change, your application I-485, and secure an advance parole document. Once approved, that document legally allowed you to travel home to India without needing to deal with the nightmare of H1B visa stamp. Now, under the final action dates, you cannot even apply for the travel document unless a green card is physically waiting for you. It traps you in your current visa status and severely limits your freedom to travel or change jobs. This directly impacts all countries, but mostly China and India, who are already struggling with long wait lines, sometimes that span into 2 decades. According to the sources, this tighter deadline is because USCIS is performing more expanded background checks, more interviews, and including the social media search. New rules will also affect asylum applications and all sorts of visas. If for whatever reason, if there was a request for document on your case, expect further delays on your processing times. And speaking of heightened scrutiny, our next news talks about deportation of green card holders. Until now, Indians and everyone else thought once you get green card, you're fairly safe from the clause of USCIS and immigration action, but that has just been proven otherwise. According to this report, the US has reinstated deportation proceedings against Mohsen Madhavi and Mahmood Khalil. You may have heard about Mahmood Khalil because he was very popular on TV last year. Although they were being deported last year, they appealed in front of the court and court just handed the USCIS the right to deport them even though they were green card holders. The idea is simple. If you don't like the country that you are granted permission to live in, you don't have to live there. Especially and more so if you are actively rallying against the country that gave you a visa to come and live or study. This directly ties to the earlier news in another episode where USCIS is checking everyone's social media handles and their posts. And if any of them seemed controversial or anti-national, they are being rejected visas. And if they are already in US on a visa, their visas are being revoked. So this is consistent in terms of how you behave socially and how you behave in the US or against US on a visa. Your green card may not protect you from being deported. Especially for the NRIs, the takeaway is very simple. Until you hold a US passport, your freedom of speech comes with severe immigration risks. You can say whatever you want, but you also have to face the consequence of whatever you said. If you're on a student visa, participating in certain protests or taking strong geopolitical stance can and will increase the trigger reviews and jeopardize your visa status. Now moving to an urgent health alert for anyone traveling this month. If you're flying internationally, especially through Europe or Africa, exercise extreme caution. The Netherlands Times reports that a KLM flight attendant has been hospitalized in Netherlands after coming in contact with a passenger infected with Hantavirus on a flight from Johannesburg. The passenger that the flight attendant has come in contact with has tragically passed away, and she was tied to a larger outbreak originating from a Dutch cruise ship. According to the health authorities, Hantavirus pulmonary syndrome (HPS) is incredibly dangerous, carrying a mortality rate of nearly 38%. To put that in perspective for you, at the height of the pandemic, the baseline mortality rate of COVID-19 was roughly 1 to 3%. This virus is exponentially more fatal. The good news is Hantavirus is nowhere near as contagious as COVID-19. COVID-19. It is usually contracted by inhaling aerosolized virus from rodent droppings. However, some variants of this virus can spread from person to person through close contact, which is exactly why authorities are investigating this flight crew so closely. The symptoms start like a mild flu but can rapidly progress within 24 hours to severe respiratory failure. Health authorities are actively conducting contact tracing. Keep your masks handy on long haul flights in case you need them. Wash your hands more thoroughly and more frequently. And keep an eye on the news, including this channel. If you subscribe, you can get updates on this epidemic as well. Keep an eye on the updates as they come out, especially if you're traveling. In an interesting news coming out of India, according to a recent survey from Money Control, Gulf-based NRIs are aggressively dumping their Indian real estate. Amid rising Middle East tensions and a desire for high liquidity, NRIs are channeling the massive 70 to 80% of their property sale proceeds directly into large and mid-cap Indian equities. The mindset has shifted. Managing empty apartments from Dubai or Riyadh is no longer worth the hassle when Indian stock market is offering high liquidity and higher growth. This is one of the reasons, and also it could be one way to keep cash flow moving in case they get thrown out of the country or are forced to return back to India. The move from real estate properties into equities that earn dividends and grow on a regular basis seems to be more logical for the Gulf-based NRIs. Whether this results in lower real estate rates in India or not, we just have to wait and see. Now, moving to Australia, a recent survey showed that number of Indians in Australia has exceeded number of UK-based Britishers in Australia. And this has happened for the first time in the history of Australian immigration and demographics. However, even though Indian diaspora has exponentially grown in Australia, they still continue to be fragmented and divided. This, in addition to growing immigration concerns, growing racial outlash, and growing number of anti-immigration movements in Australia, including demonstrations such as March for Australia. In an unrelated news, Google has doubled down on their investments and hiring in India for the AI wave. Google sees India as next AI frontier where the demand as well as the skill to keep up with the demand both exist in the same geographic location. This comes at the same time when Moody has just indicated that India's economy is most resilient in the current time of uncertainty. It also said that it's not only handling the current crisis and unrest very well, it is also the country that is most prepared for any future shocks. This partly because of India's internal domestic funding as well as local market and sizable service market. Among the countries that demonstrated limited spikes in borrowing costs, contained currency depreciation very well, and consistent access to capital markets during global shocks included India along with Thailand, Malaysia, and Indonesia. That's all for this episode. Make sure to subscribe and like so that you can keep up with what's happening around the world that directly impacts an NRI's life.